Hello, hello. This is the first time that we have done what we're calling counting on women, a more up close and personal conversation with experts in various fields, and so this is kind of a beta experiment. You're all part of that. Thank you for being brave enough to do it. Thank you especially to Georgia Kelly, who's our expert tonight. I'm your host. My name is Ricky Gard-Diamond. And I want to point out to you, you're probably familiar with this already, but at the bottom of your screen, you'll see there's a place that shows how many participants are here. And the chat is a place where you can let yourself be known with your address if you'd like people to know that. And then you'll see a place where you can, I might call on you to raise your hand to see what you think about something. And then there also is a Q&A token there at the bottom where after Georgia and I talk a while, we're going to invite your questions and comments, and you'll have a chance to put them in there. We won't be calling on you through raising your hands because it gets more complicated in the webinar, and I'm not complicated enough to handle that. So we're going to do it with Q&A this time. It's getting a little late, so I think we probably better get started. I introduced myself. I'm Ricky Gard-Diamond with an economy of our own, and this is Counting on Women. Tonight we have the pleasure of welcoming Georgia Kelly, founder of Praxis Peace Institute, to our virtual fireside. You're going to have to pretend that you see our fireside here for a personal chat about important and really different economic solutions that we fear too few Americans really know about or have heard much about. And that is worker-owned and worker-governed corporations. And focus tonight on one of the largest ones in the world, a place called Mondragón, or a company called Mondragón. We're going to get to more details with Georgia in a minute, but first, let me explain why we're calling this Counting on Women. We don't mean to omit anyone, and who knows, we may be hosting other genders here in future talks, so long as they don't leave out our Mother Earth and we people with wombs when they're coming up with their economic equations. But we chose this title, Counting on Women, to honor the mother of feminist economics, whose name is Marilyn Waring from New Zealand, whose 1988 book, If Women Counted, really made all the difference, marking the beginning of current questions about essential elements in the economy that are largely left out of the picture now in an economy that's largely waged as war. So an economy of our own is an educational nonprofit committed to a grounded economics lived in real complex communities where you live. And our goal is to model how women can talk together and learn together about traditionally male territory that is still unfamiliar to most women. Our Counting on Women series aims to empower you to share your knowledge and expertise through conversations with one another. We think you probably know more than you think you do, and your thoughts are important for making the changes that we hope are going to come about in the future when more of us are participating. Now, every Monday of the month, you can count on an AEOO event. We have introducing subjects through Zoom of our own panels, which we had last month on this session, on this subject rather, with Jamila Medley and Georgia Kelly talking about how cooperative business models are really working in women-friendly ways. And this is a follow-up and a more in-depth and kind of granular discussion about the details. So with that, let me introduce our guest, Georgia Kelly. You read about her in our bio. She's, I dare say, knows more about Mondragón than almost anyone else in the United States. And we're so lucky to have you here, Georgia. I am so pleased you're here, and going to be sharing what you've learned designing seminars with Mondragón over the last decade now. So tell us, how did you first learn about Mondragón and become curious about what it was, and why has it inspired you for so many years now?
Well, I first learned about Mondragón in the mid-90s, so that's a while ago, and I wasn't able to follow up on anything at the time. I heard about it and was intrigued and thought, this is a place I want to know more about. And eventually, at that time, I hadn't started Praxis Peace Institute yet, but when I did, we were doing conferences in abroad and locally, but we did one in Dubrovnik, Croatia in 2007. And I thought, I want someone from Mondragón to speak at this conference. It'll be in Europe and it won't be hard for them to get to. But of course I knew nobody there. And I called a few economists I knew, thinking somebody would have a contact. Not only did none of the economists I called have contacts, they'd never heard of Mondragón. So this was really a surprise. And I thought, well, I'm going to have to cold call. And I did one midnight, and got someone who eventually got me to an English speaker. And I had a few emails with him and invited him to come and speak at our conference in Dubrovnik. And he came. And while he was in Dubrovnik, we decided, okay, we need to do a week-long seminar where people can really learn the details about how Mondragón works, how it started, why it continues to work so well, no matter how many downturns or problems that come up. They seem to thrive. So I thought the only way to do that is to have time to really spend with them there and have them teach us. So the following year, 2008, was the first seminar we did. And this year in September, we're taking our 11th group for a week. So anyone who's interested in coming, we've got some things in the chat box about how you can sign up and get more information too.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, you brought some slides tonight. Would you like to share some pictures? Now, people here might not know that Mondragón is in Spain.
Yes, it's in the Basque region of Spain. So it's northern Spain. And it's a beautiful area, very wooded, very green. They have more rain there, unfortunately, than lots of other parts of Spain, but it is very beautiful. So if you share your screen.
I think you're able to share your screen.
Okay, I will do it right now then.
Okay.
Okay, I'm looking. All right, so this is Mondragón, Spain, an economic and cultural model for the 21st century. I'm going to really fast forward through most of these because I want you to see pictures and we can talk about what the text is without having to read it. So this is one picture of an area in the Basque countryside. It's really quite lovely, as you can see. This is just in the hills just above the town of Mondragón. And that's the headquarters of the Mondragón Corporation of all the cooperatives. So they have a multi-story headquarters there, where we have our first session is in that headquarters, actually. I won't go into all this. This is the founder of Mondragón. It was a Catholic priest, Father Jose Maria Arizmendi Arrieta, and quite a visionary, practical visionary. These are the 10 core principles of Mondragón. So this is an important part of who they are, how they were founded, and why they thrive to this day, even in spite of all that we've been through. So you can see education is at the core there. That's what they consider as the most important component of creating and maintaining cooperatives. And all the rest of this is available on the Praxis website, including this, the core principles. So you can find them. This is just a picture of the town of Mondragón. And this building on the right here is where we have our sessions. It's totally renovated on the inside, beautiful place, 3 stories. And then we can take walks outside around in our breaks. It's a beautiful place to learn. So that's where we are. This is a picture taken from just inside the lobby of that building.
Oh, it is lovely.
It is beautiful. I mean, you feel so happy in this place. This is part of the grounds.
So is it like a campus?
Like a what?
A campus, an educational
It is a bit like a campus. Yes, it is. I would say that's a good, these are just some of the things they do. They make auto parts for all the car manufacturers in the world. They make elevators, escalators, they have a supermarket, and they make Orbea bicycles, which are supposed to be state-of-the-art bikes. This is one of their university campuses, one that we go to, actually. That's another one of their campuses. This was our first group, a few of us, not all of us, from the first group in 2008 in the town. Isn't that nice?
Yes.
There may be 1 or 2 people on the call who were in that picture, actually. And this is the bank headquarters. It's a huge banking system with over 400 branches now. Bank was founded in 1959. That's one of the branches.
Now, what's remarkable about this is I mean, these are huge buildings, a huge enterprise.
They're huge, yeah.
And it was started with just a group of how many men? There were 3 men, 5 men?
5 men began the first cooperative in 1956. Yeah. And it grew from there to now over 100 worker-owned cooperatives. And this is the Culinary Arts Center. It's supposed to be designed like plates, one plate on top of another, very light and airy inside, which you can't tell from looking at that picture. But there's one of the floors where they have a restaurant in the Culinary Arts Center. We always go there for our group. And this is a picture of San Sebastian, which we always go to as well. Beautiful, beautiful place. Another group of people who came on one of our trips from Hawaii. They were 3 of them were from Hawaii, 1 from Oregon. This is my favorite place to go have afternoon tea in San Sebastian. So I always have to include it. They have an outdoor patio too. That's the Guggenheim Museum in Bilbao, which we also go to. Yeah, it's beautiful. This is the back of it, a big spider sculpture taken from inside the Guggenheim over the river. And this is a 4-story high puppy made out of flowers that sits in front of the Guggenheim Museum.
Wow.
It's quite extraordinary, very whimsical. So these are just some scenes in Bilbao. This is at the Basque Parliament. Our group goes there every year. This was one of the years we were there. And the man that I'm standing next to is the head of it, Yonan Fernandez, of the Department of.
Now, the remarkable thing is that this area, beautiful as it is, was not prosperous when those 5 men and Father Arizmendi began this, right?
That's right. It was 70% unemployment in the region in the 1940s. And this is where Arizmendi Arrieta realized we've got to train the people here so they can get jobs. And once they trained people for industrial jobs, then they decided, okay, now is the time to begin our own worker-owned businesses. This was another group we took in 2012. The guy on the right there, the green t-shirt, is Ilya Scheiman, who was the head of MoveOn.org. Some really interesting people have come on these trips. That's our 2015 group, 2017. That's in front of the Mondragón headquarters. And this is our seminar package. This is the seminar that we're going to be doing this year in September. And we do offer the most extensive, in-depth seminar available at the Mondragón Cooperatives because we've been jointly creating it over the years. So we now have tailored it to what people really want to learn when they come from here to go to Mondragón. So this is what we have: daily lectures, tours, And these are some of the things that are included in that tour. So that's more of the things that are also included. I'm kind of getting to the end of it now. And this is Praxis, which is also in the chat box. There was one thing I wanted to go back to, if I can, if I can get back to it. It's toward the beginning and I skipped over it and didn't mean to. Well, this is interesting. Women are paid the same salary as men for the same jobs. There's no difference.
What a notion.
Isn't that a nice idea? And worker owners can train for other jobs for free. Training is free. Managerial training is free. To become board members, that's free training. They get 4 to 6 weeks paid vacation plus paid sick leave every year. They provide healthcare, social welfare. It's an extraordinary system. Yeah, this is interesting because this is what the president of the Basque Parliament, for those of you who don't know, the Basque region is a semi-autonomous area and it has its own parliament. And the president of that parliament, he's not president now, I don't think, but he was, Juan Jose Ibarreche, he says one of the greatest failures of neoliberal economic and political thought has been its abandonment of humanity to the impulses of the market. And a market without values is not a real market, but an auction. I mean, these are the ideas that are framing Mondragn. We need a new form of government, one that maximizes citizen participation at all levels of public administration. And lastly, the Basque model of sustainable human development has been possible because there was a vision of nation that guided our political, economic, and social self-government.
Oh, inspiring, very inspiring. Well, yeah. Oh my goodness. So
lots of ideas in there, I know.
So of course, I know the burning questions out there in the audience, at least in my mind, is, you know, how did they do that exactly? But when I say, how did they do that exactly? Maybe we can begin by contrasting what they did during the 2008 financial crash and compare it to how our own system of mostly transnational, privately owned, or even publicly owned corporations handled the 2008 crash and compare that to how Mondragn did. So I did a little poking around to remind us of what 2008 did to us. And stand by while I give you some statistics and remind you, because this is something we're still living with here in the United States, at least. In 2008, it started with the banks having to be bailed out by we the people. And because our economy's lifeblood is borrowed bank money for that auction, corporations tightened their belt. And what happened to workers here in the United States? 9 million people lost their jobs. Unemployment rates doubled to 10%, and the poverty rate went from 12 to 15%, although I have to caution people and say that there are questions about the accuracy of both of those measures, the poverty and the employment rate. And over 6 million households lost their homes to foreclosures, 6 million. And in 2006, by comparison, large cities had renters at a rate of about 21%. But last time they looked, and I think it was in 2014, 47% of city dwellers now rent. So we have many more renters now than we have people who can afford to own their own house. And it's harder than ever, which makes a real difference for young people. Retirement funds, our IRAs and our 401ks lost $2.3 trillion. The average loss for those close to retiring was 20 to 25% of their savings, just vanished dollars. And many were unable to retire as planned. And this is going to affect future retirees as well, because we're still not over it. We saw increased stress. We saw poor health outcomes. Our life expectancy has actually gone down since then. And we've seen declines in educational achievement and other things. Stock ownership, which before 2008, 62% of Americans claim to have some stock ownership, usually in their pension funds. And now it's only 55% of Americans, and mostly those are wealthy and older Americans. Now, how much do you think the top 10% now own of our stocks? What percentage do you think it is? Anybody want to volunteer something in the chat?
I didn't hear the question. Percentage of what?
The top 10% wealthiest Americans own what percentage of the stocks, corporate stocks in our, yes, John put it in our chat.
90%?
That's being 95%. Well, that's close. It's 81%. It's actually a little bit better, but that leaves what is that? 19% for 90% of the rest of us. So fewer wealthy Americans are controlling our corporations, our jobs, and policy decisions. And they're making those decisions not only in corporations, but in Washington too. So that is what has happened here in the United States after the 2008. Maybe Georgia can tell us more about how Mondragón faced the same crisis, right? Because this was a global crisis. It didn't affect just the United States.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, in Spain, it's interesting because, first of all, in 2008 was the first year that we took a group for a seminar at Mondragón, and it was in October 2008 when all this hit the fan. We were in Spain. We were at Mondragón when it happened. And some of us were saying, can we just stay here and not go home? Because we knew what we were going home to. So that year, there was no consequence. But what did happen shortly thereafter is the unemployment rate in Spain went to 25%, which is huge. Mondragón unemployment rate, 0. So this is also a huge difference. And there are a lot of reasons why it was 0 at Mondragón. And of course, ultimately one of the fallouts from it, but not totally attributed to the 2008 downfall, was the bankruptcy of Fagor, which was their domestic appliance company. And they still have another Fagor, which makes industrial appliances. They make stoves and refrigerators and all kinds of things for hotels and restaurants. So that's still operational, but the domestic appliance one folded in 2013. A lot of it was because there were other countries making cheaper washing machines and dryers and refrigerators for the households. And they were always focused on quality and not so much on quantity. So they kind of lost in that round, and they did bankrupt the company. And what happened though, there were over 2,000 employees in Fagor, and they decided that they would do what their 10 core principles direct them to do, which is intercooperation is one of those core principles. They would look to other Mondragón companies to employ some of the people who've lost their jobs. So many of them were able to get employment with other companies within the Mondragón corporate umbrella. Some went on early retirement with full benefits. Others couldn't find a job right away, needed retraining. The retraining was free. And they also got 80% of their salary up to 2 years if they couldn't find work up until that point. And of course, they would find work before then. But those are the guarantees within the system, which means no one's freaking out. and no one's despondent and worried about losing their house or worried about if they're going to get another job. There's such support within the system to train you for another job, to find you another job, or to let you go on early retirement. But the options were multiple. And what ended up happening in about 2 years, all the people were either placed in other jobs or they retired early, but everyone was handled. So nobody was out any longer. And that's how they handled something like a bankruptcy that only partially resulted, I think, from the economic downturn. It was also because of the pricing and a lot of other things. But the actual downturn itself really didn't seem to have an impact on the Mondragón cooperatives at all in terms of employment. Nobody lost their jobs because of it. So it's quite remarkable.
Well, it is remarkable when you think about, you spoke about Mondragón being an umbrella and actually having how many businesses under that umbrella?
About 103. And some of them are fairly big.
And what are they? What sort of businesses are they?
Well, we passed through that really fast on the slideshow, but they make automobile parts that are sold to all the major car companies, including US companies like General Motors, Ford, Mercedes-Benz, BMW. They sell to all the major car companies, the components they make, which are brake pads and all kinds of other things. And they make elevators, escalators. What else do they make? All sorts of things. They made buses. The bus that you saw in that slideshow, they had made. So they're primarily industrial, and they've made a lot of things like that. But they, in recent years, have focused so much on research and development that they now have the largest research and development complex in all of Europe, with 15 separate entities that are part of this complex. So they're constantly looking for new developments, new discoveries. They're working with geneticists. They're at leading edge in so many areas that, you know, when people think of kind of hippie communes in the 70s, this is not Mondragón. They are really feet on the ground, very scientifically oriented, and their research is second to none. I mean, they really have quite an extraordinary complex, and we go to the complex and go to at least one of their research and development companies when we're there.
And all of that is related to their core principle of education, is it not?
Yes, it is.
That's another cooperative, you know, they have faculty, they have an institution, they have classes.
They have one university that's focused primarily on business, and there are young people who are in the program there, and they call themselves teampreneurs because they learn how to be entrepreneurs in teams. And it's really striking what they've done. That program began, I think, in 2010. And many graduates from the program now work in worker-owned businesses that their group started while they were university students. So it's quite extraordinary. And one young woman I know, she's now about 29 or 30, she was in the first group that was creating a cooperative while she was an undergrad. And now she is part of a consulting cooperative in Bilbao, where they help people either transition or form cooperatives in Spain, as well as other parts of the world. So they're working in India, in China, in other areas. And as their students, they also go to different countries. The teampreneur group will go to maybe China one year, Brazil another year, or the US one year. So they go to different countries and spend a few months to see what's going on in these places. Often they study the languages. So they're preparing for this century. They're not stuck in the old world. They're really preparing for what's ahead.
And we had someone in the audience ask a good question. How did they grow from 5 gentlemen in a study group to become this incredible collective set of corporations working together?
Well, I think the main reason why it grew the way it did is Father Arizmendi Arrieta decided that what they needed to be able to grow the cooperative movement was to form a bank.
Ah,
And when they started the bank in 1959, they said everyone who's now, they already had more than one worker cooperative at that time, but they said everyone who's working in a worker co-op has to put their money in this bank to get it started. And I don't understand banking, so I'm not the one that can answer those questions, but they do have a large bank complex now with over 2,000 people employed by the bank itself with different branches. So that has helped them finance new companies. And they wouldn't have been able to do it without their own bank. So they saw, or I would say Arizmendi understood what needed to happen. Although the people that were working in the co-ops then didn't see the value of it, and they didn't want to have a bank. And they didn't know anything about a bank. So Arizmendi went to the government and got the papers to create a bank, but he needed signatures of 3 people, so 2 more after himself, and nobody would sign it. So he forged their signatures and, and took it to the government and got the bank started. So that was kind of the only improper thing he probably did the whole time, but it made this happen. So
wow.
they tell that.
Funny. And 2,000 jobs just in the banking part of this corporation or this.
Yes.
Wow. Well, you mentioned earlier the importance of research and development for Mondragón, and I often wonder, why is it that so few Americans have even heard of Mondragón, because their record is so incredible. And yet, I think I know, because you told me this in the past, Georgia, that they don't spend a lot of money on marketing and advertising. They put their money into research and development and,
Right.
and the quality of the products that they're putting out. So by
advertising is not part of their game plan.
No,
and, they don't do it. And it's interesting that in Spain, and I don't know how many other European countries, but it's true in a lot of them, billboards are prohibited. So you won't see billboards on the beautiful terrain. You're driving along this beautiful freeway and it's all nature. There's not one billboard. And that is lovely. It's very refreshing. But they don't advertise and they don't promote themselves. So, and there's a reason for that. I think, well, there's more than one, but one major reason is probably the fact that they began these cooperatives during Franco's reign. So they really had to stay under the radar.
oh,
and
wow.
They're very used to staying under the radar and not promoting themselves. And Arizmendi was imprisoned for a while. Franco imprisoned him. He got out, but they were wary. And I think what they did was decide we need to stay below the radar if we're going to continue to function and not be shut down. So I think that's how they started, with that way of thinking. But they're also not self-promoters. They're very humble people. And I think they grow slowly in a way. They're not trying to acquire properties and turn them around and sell them. That's just not the way they work. So it's a very different model than what we see in the US. And
Really?
it's inspiring in so many ways. I know every time I go there, and of course I've been now 10 times, and I feel really, it's unfortunate because of COVID, we haven't been for 3 years. So this will be the first time in 3 years that we're going back, and I can't wait to be there. It's such a supportive place just to be there. And you feel it among the people who are working in these cooperatives, the people who are giving us lectures and taking us around. It's just a very, I don't know how to put it, it's cozy. It's a cozy feeling.
Well, I remember one time you told me that when you go there, you don't see what we see here in the United States with all of the, the McMansions everywhere.
Right.
But on the other hand, you don't see a lot of homeless and people living on the streets either.
I was just thinking that this morning. I took a walk around our plaza and there were 2 homeless people sleeping on benches. And I'm usually not there in the morning early. I don't get up early usually, but I was today. And I thought, wow, that's kind of a surprise. I mean, I know we have that problem here, but you would never see that in Mondragón or anywhere in the Basque region. And the interesting thing is, yes, you see no poverty. I mean, everybody notices that when they go. There are no slums, there are no people living in the street, there are no homeless. And the other end of that equation is there are no mansions in the hills. They don't do that either. And so they've kind of lopped off the 2 ends of the economic spectrum so that everyone has enough. And I think that's a really important lesson to learn from Mondragón is they don't aspire to great wealth. They don't have this American need to acquire more and more and more. And becoming wealthy is not an aspiration. Living in community, having friends, family, that's what they live for, not for acquiring and becoming wealthy. So that aspiration, which has become so much a part of American culture, they don't have it. And it creates a very different world.
Well, it's related to another question we have here from Joanna, who says, how do the salaries at Mondragón jobs compare with salaries in surrounding areas in Spain? And I think I would add a little bit about what about the CEO to worker ratios that are so dramatic here in the United States? What does that look like?
They're not very dramatic in Mondragón. The ratio between a regular worker owner in a company and the CEO is usually 1 to 6.
Wow.
So yeah, instead of 1 to 6,000, whatever it is now, but it's 1 to 6, and occasionally it's 1 to 8 if they're really needing to get a CEO from somewhere outside. But usually it's 1 to 6. And that keeps a certain kind of person in the job. It doesn't attract the person who wants to become super wealthy.
Right.
And they don't want those people. So it's, they get what they need and they don't get what they don't want. And I think another part of when they say open admission is one of their core principles. And open admission means if there's a job opening, they're open to anyone getting it. They don't have to be Basque. But but they're not open to being taken over. And so that doesn't mean open admission to being anyone could come in and buy a company. Their companies cannot be bought. Every worker owner has 1 share. They cannot sell that 1 share. If they leave, they can get their pension and get whatever is coming back to them, but they can't sell the share. Someone else will invest and come into the company. But that is a way that they've kept the integrity of the businesses, is they can't be sold by the worker owners. And that makes a big difference.
Well, Elon Musk is going to be very disappointed to hear that, I guess.
He wouldn't, I don't think he would like Mondragón. As they say at Mondragón, that their system is not for everyone. And they say you have to be mature to be able to feel appropriate in this system.
Well, let's talk a little bit about what it means to buy that share. You have to come up with some money to purchase a share, right?
It's 15,000 euros.
How much?
15,000 euros, which very few people would have up front. So they loan the money to the worker owner and they deduct a certain amount from their check every month. And they were giving those loans for 0% interest. And I think they might be 1% now. But here's another thing they do with their banking that I think is so fascinating. So let's say a company or a person is having trouble paying their bills and paying their loan back. They lower the interest rate. They don't increase it. Our banks increase the interest rate if you're having trouble paying. Their banks decrease it, which is completely logical. So So, you know, it turns a lot of our ideas economically on their head, really.
And how does the ownership contribute to governing, for instance? I mean, policies are set by the workers themselves, yes?
They are. There's a general meeting for all the worker owners once a year, and every worker owner has to go to that general meeting. And then as they can decide how involved they want to get with their business. Some want to get very involved and others don't. And that's okay. But they do vote on, like, the managers, who's the manager. They vote on work hours. They might vote on changing hours. They have the vote to change things like that when they have their meetings. And I remember the first time we went, the first couple of times, we went to a factory that was building things. And you know, by the time we went the last time, it was all done robotically. But when people were working there, actually they had quality control people still there, even with the robotics. But it's very interesting to see how they worked with on this floor, because some people would have like a chart up on the wall where the worker owners could make suggestions of what they want changed in the working place. So the next meeting, they would bring up everything that's on that board and discuss it, make decisions about it. So there was a way you didn't have to go talk to the manager every day. You just put your idea up on the board. Then when the next meeting came, which I think came every week, those things on the board got discussed. Very logical, practical way of dealing with issues or suggestions. So it mature is the word.
And so is that part of the education as well? I don't expect you know the total curriculum that's there at the business school, but I wonder if you know, those principles of operating in a democratic way, in a way that you just described, is that part of the training as well? I don't think it's automatic for a lot of people.
No, it is not. I mean, they do learn normal business practices the way people learn in the US as well. I mean, they have their own courses, but they also learn what people are doing internationally. They're very savvy to what's going on in the world. They're not just focused on their own business process. You know, they really see what's happening in the world and they learn about it, so that they learn their own system and they learn what other people are doing. So they're savvy.
I've got a couple of questions here, more than one question about their environmental ethic. Elizabeth asks about the climate standards of Mondragón and if they have any relation to carbon offsets, and Archer versus EPA. I'm not familiar with that, but.
Yeah, I don't know as much about this. I know when we first went there, they weren't as savvy about it as they are now. They all of a sudden, any new buildings were having solar panels, or they were making changes to any new construction that was going on, because they do have a construction cooperative also. And that construction cooperative built part of the Guggenheim Museum in Bilbao. And they even came to Ground Zero in New York to help clean up. So they're quite a big corporation. I think I lost a little track of that question. So I started
environmental.
The environmental, yeah. And one of the newer buildings we went to, where they are, was the headquarters for the company making elevators and escalators, and they were doing solar panels. They were doing something else too with the energy. I can't remember what it was. As far as carbon offsets, I don't know. I mean, since I haven't been there for 3 years, I know there's a lot going on that was not going on when I was last there. And people have asked that question, and I don't think I'm probably the best person to answer that at this time. I will be when I come back this year, because that's something I'm really going to look into very strongly.
Great, great. We have another question here about co-housing. Do workers live in co-housing, and are the cooperatives the same as worker owned? Do they vote or use consensus building?
I don't know about work co-housing. I haven't witnessed that. Most people have their own apartments. Like the town of Mondragón is 23,000 inhabitants. Not everybody living there works for a Mondragón company, but about half of them do. And let's see, I'm just trying to think of, well, there's also a 1,000 more cooperatives in the Basque region besides the Mondragón cooperatives. So that was, there are 1,000 more.
So Mondragón has inspired
Yes.
the rest of Spain to become more cooperative. Wow.
Yes, they have, because there have been also spin-offs from Mondragón. Some of the companies have left Mondragón and started their own company outside of the Mondragón system. Sometimes they come back, but they've also inspired other people to begin cooperatives. So it's a huge movement in the Basque region. It's not only Mondragón. What Mondragón has done that's different is that they have this umbrella structure that is able to work intercooperatively between the various businesses. And it's been their strong point, and creating the bank and having this huge structure has allowed them to thrive. And all the cooperatives within it to thrive as well. There's so many parts to this, it's hard to just focus in one area.
Right. Well, we've got a few more questions here. John wants to know, what does buying in mean? What does having a share mean from the start? Can anyone buy a share for 15 euros?
No, anyone cannot buy a share. The only people who can buy the share are worker owners. So if you become a worker owner, they say, yes, we have a job and you can fill it. Then you invest your 15,000 euros, or you get a loan to invest it. And that's your share. But no, you cannot buy a share in a company, any Mondragón company, unless you're a worker owner. That share only belongs to the worker owner.
I see. So are there workers who are not owners at Mondragón?
Yes, there are. Because the workers that aren't owners are usually on probation. There's an 18-month probation period where you come in as a worker owner, and let's say it doesn't work out, and after 9 months, it's clear that you don't fit in, and they know it and you know it. You leave, you get your money back that you've invested so far. You get, your share goes to somebody else eventually. But that's a probationary period to see if it's a fit. And so those people are not exactly worker owners yet. They're becoming a worker owner, and that is decided upon at the end of the probationary period.
Another good question. How do they respond to bullying or violence? And maybe we can talk about, gender issues and LGBTQ questions and that sort of thing. Is there a cancel culture at Mondragón?
No, that's not anything I've ever focused on when I've been there, so I don't know, and it hasn't been in my face either. So, but gender, as I mentioned before, women get the exact same pay as men for the same work. So there's none of that inequality. At first, because of the Basque culture, which was more macho, as was the Spanish culture, there weren't as many women in managerial positions. That's changed. Even in the time that we've gone from 2008 to 2019, that has radically changed. A lot more women in positions of management and on boards. So that was a huge change that I saw in that amount of time. And they are always working on these things. And if someone points out, well, we're not doing this, then they'll look at it and take it seriously. Things don't just disappear. They really listen to people, and I think they listen to their worker owners, and that's part of its strength, really. So back to the share, that's one of the strong points of this is outsiders cannot buy shares into their companies. That's why they can't be taken over.
I see. So you have to be a worker, and then you have to decide that you want to be an owner as well.
Well, you go in thinking you want to be a worker owner. And then you're on that probationary period. And in that time, you either figure out, no, it doesn't work for you, or they figure out it doesn't, and it comes to an end. But they have to have that period, because a lot of people can't really know if this is going to be a fit for them. So it makes sense.
So I'm curious, if I were a woman with an entrepreneurial idea, would I be well supported in developing that, and say I wanted to create a brand new, I don't know, maybe become a clothing manufacturer, or a I'm guessing here, I'm pushing because I'm not an entrepreneur.
It's a hard question to answer in a way, because first of all, they don't do anything with clothing at this point in time. Doesn't mean they won't. I mean, someone could come in, there and say, this is what I'd really like to do, and I'd like it to be a cooperative, and I'd love to have it be under the Mondragón umbrella. What are my possibilities? I don't know what they would say, because you're talking about an outsider. I mean, if someone in the Basque, like someone who lives in Mondragón, wanted to do this, might be a little easier.
Right.
It might not be, but I don't know, because I've not ever heard how that would work. I do know that entrepreneurs within the industrial area, because that's where their strong point has been since the beginning. They have had entrepreneurs within the companies, and sometimes without, who come in, and they do prepare. I mean, they were giving loans to prepare business plans, to prepare prototypes or models of what the person was trying to build. So they were very supportive, and the bank was able to support those processes. So I know some things have changed around that, because when we first went to Mondragón, they would say 25% of the products or the services we will have in 4 years don't exist yet. So they were constantly 25% new all the time in some way. They don't say that anymore. And I think partially they don't say it because with the economics, the way it is globally, they've been very focused on maintaining what they have and the jobs they have. And they do create more, but it's not so much 25% will be new in 4 years. They're not thinking quite that way now. I see someone asked if they grow their own food. No, they don't. But here's an interesting thing. Because where they are in the Basque region, it's not exactly fertile country for growing a lot of food. But there's a town. In fact, if anyone goes on the trip, I would like to go down there with them. One of our group, a few people did. There's a town in southern Spain, in Andalusia, about an hour out of Seville, called Marinaleda. And that town is a self-described communist town. And everything is cooperatively owned. All businesses, all people are worker owners. Their main business is agriculture. And they grow everything. And the climate is perfect for it. They managed to, after several years of protesting and haranguing the government, they managed to get 1,200 hectares of land to grow all this food. So now they supply the Mondragón supermarket, Eroski, with produce. So this is cooperatives selling to cooperatives, which I think is just a fabulous business arrangement. So, they had a ready-made market with the Eroski supermarkets. I don't know how many they have, a few hundred Eroskis all over Spain. So it's not just in the Basque region, it's also in other parts of Spain. And so that cooperative town is able to sell a lot of their produce to Eroski, and they sell it in Sevilla and in other parts of Spain, mostly in Andalusia. But so this is a way that can be, not one group can do everything, but here's a cooperative venture where one cooperative groupings of Marinaleda is able to work with the cooperatives at Mondragón. And I think it's a wonderful example of how cooperatives can help each other. And they grow organically, by the way.
Yeah, which is one of the basic cooperative principles, isn't it? To work and cooperate with others.
That's right. The work in cooperation.
Right, and I've noticed that here in the United States, there are some cities like Jackson, Mississippi, and I believe Portland as well has a movement where they're trying to create ecosystems of cooperative businesses, seeing that that kind of interrelationship is really important for a region in a similar way to what you're describing.
Well, there is that in the Bay Area. We have, there's a group of 6 cooperatively owned bakeries called the Arizmendi Bakeries, which were named for Arizmendi Arrieta, and they're all connected. And when one of them, the newest one is in San Rafael in Marin County, and it was placed on a street with 2 other bakeries, which was not probably the greatest placement for them. So they struggled the first few years and almost went under, but did not go under because other people in the other 5 cooperatives were able to get together and say, you know, we need to help this cooperative in San Rafael. We need to send our best people there to figure out how to get the sales up, how to make this work. They did that. That was the intercooperation principle, and it worked. And that bakery and little cafe is still there, thriving.
Wonderful.
So yes, that intercooperation spirit is what really can keep these things afloat and thriving.
Mm-hmm. I'm looking at our more of our questions here. There's lots of questions here. I want to make sure I haven't left anybody out.
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to look at the questions very much, except the short ones. If they're one sentence long, I'll read them.
Oh, here's one. This is from Robin Lloyd up in Burlington. She's asking, do you know of the progressive Basque writer Kimin Uribe?
You know, I have heard, but I don't know. I have not read anything by him. I don't really know.
Robin,
But
perhaps
I'll look him up.
put it in our chat, the books that we should notice, and tell us why you think we should know about him. It sounds like he's important. Or maybe it's maybe it's a woman.
Yeah, I kind of assumed it was a man, but I might be wrong.
Yeah. Let's see, what else?
Well, I see the housing question that just came up, and you know, I don't know of cooperative housing. There may be some, but it's not a major thing. People live in their own spaces, and I would say probably most people can afford. Yeah, they can afford where they live. It's quite nice.
I did see one question where someone was asking, well, how is it possible that they can afford these things when, you know, they're working for a cooperative? The assumption sort of being that if you're working for a cooperative, like some of our own hippie cooperatives, you're not making very much money. But that's not the case at Mondragón, is it?
No, I mean, they're not making lots of money, but they're certainly making enough to live just fine, you know, to be, yeah, I've never, you know, I don't know what the salaries are now, but I know they're certainly enough to live well. And, one of the worker-owned bakeries in Sonoma County, where I live in Petaluma, the worker owners do quite well. It's a wholesale bakery. They sell to stores all over the US. It's called it's Alvarado Street Bakery. And, it's been going since the 70s. Started out as kind of a hippie co-op, but soon learned that if they were going to stay in business, they had to get over that and have, you know, real business meetings and have a plan. And I know that's one of the things that came up earlier is a consensus, how they make decisions. And consensus to them does not mean 100% agreement, because you never get anything done. And that's what the people at Alvarado Street Bakery learned in the 70s, is if you're looking for 100% agreement, you're going to be in meetings all day and you're not going to be creating a product. So they could either go under and have everyone agree on everything, or they could actually create a business. So what Mondragón aims for is 80% agreement. That's what they want. But if push comes to shove, they'll go down to 51% majority. But that rarely happens, from what I can understand.
Interesting.
because they'll talk it out long enough, but people will also give up their way. This is something that's harder for, I think, Americans to do than for them, is they don't get so attached to their idea that they can't give way. And we have a hard time with that one, I think, in our country.
How do you explain that? What makes that possible?
They're mature.
Emotionally mature.
They're mature. I mean, a lot of this hanging on to I have to have this is kind of like a 2-year-old. You know, it's not mature. And you know, I think that with the negotiate, I mean, I don't want to get off the track on this, but it's just an example with the Russia-Ukraine war. And when the US starts getting involved, it's demands, demands, demands. And if you're making demands, you're not negotiating. And this is something that America just doesn't get, that negotiating isn't making demands. It's actually sitting down, listening and talking, but it's not going in with a group of demands. And that's our problem, I think. We think in terms of demands, and they don't think in terms of demands. They think in terms of things working and finding solutions. So it's a different approach.
Yeah, I like that. Well, it's a contrast to the way that we do things here, where we not only make demands, but we're constantly urged to brand ourselves in that auction you were speaking of earlier, and to pitch ourselves, to advertise ourselves. I noticed when I was doing some research for this that the Association for American Advertisers, National Advertisers, they claim that advertising comprises fully 19% of our national total economic output, contributing, this is their word, contributing $3.4 trillion to the United States gross domestic product in 2014.
Which are focused on gross.
They call it contributing to that GDP, but really they mean that's how much money we spent on advertising. And, you know, I mentioned earlier that I think that corporations are having an undue influence in Washington. I think some of this advertising that they're bragging about here is
political.
Political advertising. Yeah. Kind of outrageous how much money we're spending on
unnecessary things
here in the United States. So because we're talking about politics a little bit here, how do you see the and perhaps you don't, but how would you describe the relationship between the Basque region, which now has its own parliament, and its relationship with business?
I thought you were going to say its relationship with Spain, which
which
is fine, because here's an interesting little story of the man who oversees our trips there told me recently that when COVID hit, Spain didn't have enough masks, and they were really scrambling because they didn't have them and they didn't know where to get them. And the Spanish government contacted Mondragón to make masks. And Mondragón was able to turn them out really fast, much faster than a normal business. They just had their meeting, they made them, and they were, I don't remember how many thousands they were churning out a month. So they were the ones that were called up by the government, because I think partially they knew they could get on it quickly, and they made those kinds of things anyway. And they just ramped up their machinery and got to it. So they have a good relationship with the Spanish government. With ordinary businesses, I don't see anyone seeing them as a threat. I don't, yeah, I wouldn't know how to answer that really.
Do you see a lot of effort to influence government policy and advocacy for particular policies
Well, because they have their own parliament, they're able to do what they want in their Basque region. And I think that's mostly where they're focused. And and having that parliament, I think, has given them a lot more power in their communities. And through it, they were also able to help contribute to the dismantling of the ETA, which was the Basque separatist group, which dissolved itself in 2018. I think it was.
Now that's related to the earlier question about violence, is it not?
That's right, it is. Yes, because I think this is an important piece because ETA, they call it ETA, we call it ETA, was the Basque separatist group that was very violent, and they had killed over 1,100 people in a 60-year period. They formed, during Franco's regime. And their idea was to get out of Spain because of Franco mostly, and form a region of the Basque states in both France and Spain. So they weren't being very successful. So they resorted to violence. And in fact, even the year before we went, they had killed the mayor. So this was really kind of shocking. And one of the men who was the head of the Basque, what was it? It was a peace center that they used to take us to on our trip. And he was head of the peace center, and he started working with some of the members of ETA, the ones who were open to considering dropping violence as a tactic. And he started meeting with them, and one thing led to another. And eventually he was meeting with enough people and creating the truth and reconciliation groups between victims and perpetrators of the violence from ETA. And within 7 years, or what actually within maybe 3 years, they actually decided no more violence. We're done with violence. They didn't give up their weaponry because they were afraid of retribution. But when we were there in 2017, they turned in all their weapons. They said we don't need them anymore. And when we were there in 2018, they dissolved ETA. I mean, the people who ran it dissolved it. So no one forced it. They came to the conclusion that it was no longer necessary to work in that way. And the truth and reconciliation process that they went through, and Yonan Fernandez, I'm going to put his name in the chat box because he's written a few books that are on Amazon, and a couple of them are translated into English, and they're remarkable. His understanding of how people can change, how they can see things differently, how you work across very difficult conflicts is exemplary. He's just really an exemplary person. And the Basque Parliament, the president of the Basque Parliament, created a Department of Peace based on this man's work and made him the head of it. So he's head of that department still, although now they call it the Department of Coexistence and Human Rights. Because they say we've achieved peace. So now we're working on coexistence and human rights. So,
wonderful. Inspiring.
yes, it is.
Well, tell us again how we can join your seminar and travel to Spain in, when was it again? In September?
It'll be in September this year. We're going it's starting September 11th to the 17th. So it's that week. It's a lovely time in Spain and in Mondragón. So we'll be there starting Sunday evening or Sunday afternoon till the following Saturday. And we'll have classes at the building I showed you, and we'll visit the university, we'll visit a few other towns and the Guggenheim. We'll go to a research and development center. We'll go to a couple of their businesses, and we'll go to their supermarket. So we'd go to different places, sometimes different years. So I will probably add some things that we haven't done yet, which I don't know about yet. But I want to make this a very special trip because we haven't been for 3 years. So if you want information, you can go to our website. I see John just posted it there, the Mondragón pages, and you can reserve a spot by giving us a deposit, and all that information is on that page, or you can call me. I'm going to put my cell phone number in this chat box, but I don't want just calls for no reason particularly, certainly not for selling things.
Wonderful.
But it's probably best to email me first, and then I won't ignore the call if I don't know you. So here's the place to email me.
Great.
I think I better put my glasses on so I don't mistype.
Oh, well, this has been wonderful. And I don't want to distract you. You just keep right on with that. But I want to let people know that if they go to your website, they'll also have access to a book that you edited that is a collection of responses to this trip that
Yes.
that you go
I
ahead.
wrote a book called the Mondragón Report, which I didn't actually write. I kind of edited it, wrote an essay, but I interviewed, and then some of them wrote their own essays, 22 or 3 people who went on one of our trips to Mondragón and how they've used it in their work here. They were really some inspiring models and people with what they've been able to do with their learnings at Mondragón. It changes your life. There's no question about it. No matter what your work is or what you're doing in your life, it has a life-changing effect on everyone who goes.
Well, Georgia, thank you so very much. I want to just share a few slides. I will also confide in people that you are part of the advisory board for an economy of our own. We're honored to have you be part of our organization. And let me just share a little bit so people can learn more about what we're doing these days. Let me see, I think I want to share that. Okay, and do this. Whoops. Okay. No more mansplaining only. Let's flip the script on a sexist and racist economy. Feminist economics are not just for women, it includes all of us. And I began the screen share in the wrong spot. I have other slides I want to show you, and I don't know how to get to them now.
Just press that little arrow on your keyboard.
Yeah, you know, she's a no-go. I don't know what's the matter here. Let me see if I can back this up and go to view. No, that's not going to let me do it either. Nope, I just totally messed it up. Here we go. I wanted to show you. All right, so now I want to play this in full screen. All right, come on, play. Oh dear. It doesn't want to let me play view. I'm so sorry. I knew this would happen. This is because I don't have my technical assistant here. We're here with me. At any rate, you can see here that we do have a YouTube channel, and this is a place where you can see all of our Zooms of our own, which are recorded. This one will be recorded and posted there as well. This actually isn't a Zoom of our own where we introduce topics. This is one of our conversations. And I just want to show you that we have 3 levels of learning at an economy of our own. The Zoom of our own panels introduce economic topics and new solutions, while counting on women, our conversations following up in a more granular way, like we had today with wonderful Georgia. Our learning circles are more intense workshop series on an economic solution, combining learning and action. And right now we have one learning circle on public banking, which is kind of a related financial banking issue that we think would provide a lot of solutions. So that is happening, but we're hoping to develop more learning circles on subjects that you tell us you'd like to learn about. And then finally, I have to mention our giving circle, which enables you to invest in women's voices. Your donations will help us help us continue to bring women's voices to the economic realm here. But you don't have to be an expert to be part of us. We lift up every woman's expertise in knowing the economy. We like to think that you know more than you think you do. And then finally, that feminist economics are not just for women, but for all of us. So that's an economy of our own. I'm so glad that you were able to join us and were able to find us and contributed so much with your good questions, and your the chat is valuable. You'll be receiving a copy of this and the chat in your inbox pretty soon. I'll be adding you to an Economy of Our Own newsletter, which comes out once a month and is full of all kinds of good solutions and things that people are doing to make a difference. And if it's too much for you, you can easily unsubscribe. But we hope to see you again, and tell your friends and count us among your friends. I think that's enough for now, don't you? May everyone and everything that you love prosper and flourish. Until next time, then, I'm going to wish you good night. Thank you again, Georgia. Thank you, everyone.
Wonderful to
night.
be with you.
You too.
Bye.